that sucks.
That sucks.
I was telling a friend of mine over the phone after my first surgery about all the things that were going wrong, and she was just floored by like how many things just kept coming up. Like it was one thing after another, and all she said was, "That sucks. Like that really sucks." And just to have someone acknowledge that you're going through a hard time,
It opens the floodgates.
Exactly, it is incredibly helpful, and it is in our, again, maybe just in our human makeup to try to fix things and say, well, if someone's coming to me with all these problems, they're doing it because they want me to fix it, and that's maybe not the case, and I think quite often isn't the case. Because you want someone to just hear your problems, hear you out, and be able to say, yes, I acknowledge that what you're going through is really difficult, and I'm sorry that you have to deal with that. And that in itself was incredibly helpful to me, rather than trying to say, okay, well, have you tried this?
Yeah.
And have you tried probiotics? Or have you tried being vegan? And whatever else it may be.
Yeah.
Because people, will do a 1-minute Google search and think that they have the answers for you. And I said, well, thank you for doing that Google search. You have saved my life.
As if I haven't done that 20 times before.
No, literally, people are like, oh, have you heard of like this diet?
Yeah.
Like, have you eaten enough,
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I never thought of that.
Or if you're telling someone that, I have depression, I have anxiety, and they come out to you with it, well, happiness is a choice. And
just think positively.
And those are, there is truth to those sayings, but in that moment, it's not very helpful, and it's not what you need to hear.
No.
So just the acknowledgement that something is wrong, I think, is very beneficial for caregivers to do. And I was going to say something else, but I totally forgot.
And if something I can add to, just because we've talked about the stigma, if someone gives you the reaction that you don't want or you weren't looking for, and it can be very, like, it shuts you down, like you don't want to try talking to people then again too, right? Because you've taken, you've raised the courage to kind of go and talk to somebody about this, and they go, oh, just take this, whatever. Then you're like, okay, what's the point? And I'll just, I'll go to the internet, or something. I'll just do something else. So.
And I remember now what it is.
There you go.
One of the things that I learned in some of my mindfulness courses was it is actually difficult for people to be just listeners.
Absolutely.
Because no matter what people are telling you, you're going to have some kind of cue. Even if you're not saying anything, you might nod, you might have like little bits of body language. So one thing that we actually practiced was having someone tell you something and not do anything in response, but just listen. And they were like called active listening practices. So it may be something worth telling a caregiver, like, I just need you to sit here and just listen. And even if they start nodding, just let them know, okay, well, nodding is fine, but I just really need you to listen and not try to make any recommendations about what could happen next.
Yeah.
But listening is important from the caregiver perspective.
And sometimes, people may not have that, right? People
Right.
may not have those support systems, and as much as you try to educate people or you look for, those kinds of supportive people, you just may not find them. So that's why it's important to seek help from a social worker in the community, your doctor who can point you in the right direction. If you are in the hospital, ask, get a referral to see a psychiatrist.
Right. But I do want to say to that point that, even through this conversation, this is making me think that I think a lot of my issues with doctors and with medical professionals is that what I needed from them was not their role. Because they're not the one that are going to sit and listen actively. That's not what they're supposed to do, but it's actually like a human need. It's a human need that we actually need, and that is really, really hard for our families to do. Like, yes, my parents love me, but they're more worried than I am, They're not going to sit with me and listen, because I have to calm them down. So I think that the reason I went into patient advocacy is because I recognized that there was this gap. And so, I can go with you to your appointment and sit with you after and sit with you before, and that I just recognized that there was this gap that wasn't being filled, of just support that is often difficult to find. And then, when you have that, you're like expecting the right thing from your medical professionals. Because, I remember once my surgeon said to me, she was like, because I had so many complications with my surgery, and it was really hard, and she was like, Montana, I'm crying, and she's not comfortable with tears. She doesn't know what to do with me. I'm too emotional. And she's like, Montana, what do you want from me? And I'm like, I just want a hug. and she gave me this awkward hug, but she was really uncomfortable, and clearly she was not the person that I needed for that, but I just needed something, you know? And so...
Acknowledgement.
Acknowledgement,
Right?
yeah.
At least she did give you a hug.
She did give me the hug. It was like a very...
Awkward as it may have been.
Yes, she tried, yeah.
And so for caregivers as well, because people who are looking after someone who has IBD, maybe they don't have the disease themselves, but it takes a toll on them as well, as you probably saw with your parents, and
Yes.
I know through my family as well. Can they reach out to social workers as well in the same way, or what kind of steps can caregivers take to look after their own mental health?
Absolutely. I mean, as I mentioned, as social workers, we consider the whole family, the whole system as the client. It's, if one part of the system's having challenges, the whole system's not going to thrive as well, right? As well as it should be. So absolutely, if anybody can seek help from a social worker, you don't need to be a patient. And I think it's equally as important, because we know that caregivers, if they're constantly giving, right, and if they are doing the listening role of hearing all the terrible things that the person that they care about is going through, that takes a toll too, right? You're basically living it along with the person, right? You're not having the physical experience of what they're going through, but absolutely, you're hearing the trauma of going through the system. You're experiencing, when you're going through the surgery, presumably someone who you care about is there waiting and, worried and, what if this,
Yeah.
Other thoughts?
I haven't had that experience. I was in the surgery as well, but but I'm trying to channel the.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely, like, it's very, very important. And I think now caregivers we're learning more about the challenges that caregivers have, and I think it's been overlooked. I mean, I think, I can't remember the exact stat, but caregivers provide billions and billions of dollars in unpaid care for our patients, right? They're really holding up the healthcare system, and so I think it's a real gap in the healthcare system, but I think it's equally as important. That's why the support groups that we have, specifically in Mount Sinai, but I know in other settings too, we invite caregivers, support people to come to the groups as well.
Absolutely. And again, the resources, a little handout that's at the back of the room, free plug for Crohn's and Colitis Canada here. We have a program called Gutsy Peer Support, so it's an online peer-to-peer networking site, and it does allow caregivers to connect with other caregivers as well. So you can hear and just have a sounding board from someone who knows really specifically what it's like to care for someone who has IBD, even when you may not have the disease yourself. So free plug for the
If I could just say one more thing
Sure.
too to this point is another stat is 50% of Canadians by the age of 40 will either have had or have an experience of mental illness. So add IBD, add caregiving for someone with IBD. I mean, you're increased. It's not research. I mean, definitely. I mean, people with IBD. We were talking about this before the talk. One study suggests that people with IBD have 3 times higher increased risk of having mental illness over the general population. So even caregivers, I mean, typically would likely be at higher risk based on the stresses that they're experiencing.